And I said, I can't do this anymore. You know, the guy's going to die, first of all.
Months before Eddie Van Halen passed away, he asked Sammy Hagar for a promise, not a casual favor, something deeply personal. Eddie made it clear that this secret was meant to stay between them. No one else was supposed to know, not the fans, not the band, not even his own brother, Alex Van Halen. At the time, Eddie and Alex hadn't spoken in years. Despite the distance between them, Eddie still carried a hope that never really faded. During one emotional conversation, he opened up to Sammy about a dream that refused to leave him alone, a final tour that would reunite everyone, one last time on stage, one last thunderous run that would remind the world what they had built together. Eddie believed he could make it happen. He told Sammy that once he beat his illness, they would turn the amps up again and make noise the way they always had.
And when I tried to quit, there was an attorney that drew up a contract, I guess, that I signed. It said,
Sammy listened carefully, understanding how much that vision meant to him. And when Eddie asked him to keep the conversation private, Sammy agreed without hesitation. For years, he kept that promise. Only recently did he finally reveal the quiet words Eddie had shared before the end. But long before those emotional final conversations, Sammy Hagar's story had already been shaped by hardship. Sammy was born on October 13, 1947, in Monterey, California, the youngest of 4 children. From the very beginning, life around him was anything but easy. His family initially lived in a labor camp before eventually moving to Fontana, a working-class town east of Los Angeles. Unfortunately, the move didn't magically fix their struggles. His father, Bobby Hagar, had once been a respected bantamweight boxing champion before taking a job working exhausting shifts at the Kaiser Steel Mill. But as time went on, alcohol slowly began to take control of his life. The instability it caused meant the family was constantly moving, sometimes without much warning. There were nights when they didn't even have a proper roof over their heads. On those evenings, the family slept in tents, hoping the next day might somehow be better. Through it all, Sammy's mother carried the weight of raising the children almost entirely on her own. Food wasn't always guaranteed. Some nights the kids went to bed hungry, learning early what survival really meant. By the time Sammy was just 8 years old, he had already started cooking simple meals for the family. He boiled spaghetti and made tomato sauce from tomatoes they grew themselves because there simply wasn't another option. If they wanted to eat, they had to make it happen.
and thank God he got himself together. He would not be alive another year. Well, I guess the next tour he went out on, he ended up in the hospital.
Sammy didn't stop there. As he grew older, he picked fruit, delivered newspapers, and mowed lawns to help bring money into the house. Yet even while juggling work and responsibility, he pushed himself hard in school. Those years built a relentless work ethic that would stay with him for the rest of his life. His father's boxing background also left a strong impression on him. Bobby Hagar had fought the legendary Manuel Ortiz multiple times, first as an amateur and later as a professional. Known for his knockout power, Bobby's first 8 professional fights all ended with devastating knockouts. That intensity followed him home, and he encouraged Sammy to pursue boxing as well. So Sammy trained hard. From a young age, he learned how to throw fast jabs, move lightly on his feet, and stay alert in the ring. Sparring sessions with his father and older brother sharpened his instincts. By the time he was 14, Sammy genuinely believed he might build a future as a boxer. Then one afternoon changed everything. During a sparring match, Sammy stepped into the ring with a Mexican fighter who already had around 30 professional bouts behind him. The experience difference was enormous, but Sammy didn't fully realize it until it was too late. A single brutal left hook landed flush. The punch rattled him so badly that the truth hit just as hard as the blow itself. In that moment, Sammy realized he didn't want a future where taking hits like that would be part of everyday life. His mother saw the pain on his face afterward and begged him to walk away from boxing.
Good frontman of that style, but that wasn't anything I ever wanted to be. Growing up, when I was saying I'm going to be a musician, I was looking at Stevie Winwood, I was looking at Eric Clapton, I was looking at Jimmy Page,
That moment stayed with him. Quietly but decisively, Sammy shifted his focus towards something else that had been calling to him in the background for years: music. And once he chose that path, he never looked back. Then, on June 5th, 1964, something unforgettable happened. Sammy was just 17 years old when he snuck into the Rolling Stones' very first U.S. concert at the Swing Auditorium in San Bernardino. He and his friends waited behind the venue for hours, watching and hoping for a chance to slip inside. The moment the doors opened, Sammy and his friends rushed inside with the rest of the crowd. Within seconds, they were swallowed by a wave of teenagers buzzing with excitement. The energy inside the Swing Auditorium felt electric. Kids were already climbing onto the stage, pushing forward just to get closer to the band they had only seen in magazines. Then the music started. When the Rolling Stones launched into their set, the sound exploded through the auditorium in a way Sammy had never experienced before. The guitars roared, the crowd screamed, and the entire building seemed to vibrate with raw energy. It wasn't just a concert. It felt like something powerful had been unleashed. Sammy walked out of that show a different person. For weeks afterward, he couldn't stop talking about it. The memory of that night stayed with him because something inside had shifted. Music had grabbed hold of him with a force stronger than anything he had felt before. In that moment, he realized rock wasn't just something he admired from the sidelines. It was something he wanted to live. Nearly a decade later, in 1973, Sammy was still chasing that same feeling. At the time, he was performing with a small San Francisco cover band, playing wherever they could find a stage. Life wasn't glamorous, money was tight, and Sammy balanced music with a string of odd jobs just to survive. Some days he washed dishes, other days he picked up whatever work he could find, all while hoping that the next gig might finally open a door. Then one night, fate quietly stepped into the room. A respected session guitarist named Ronnie Montrose had recently left the Edgar Winter Group and was searching for a singer for a new hard rock project. While scouting musicians, Montrose happened to catch Sammy performing on stage. Almost immediately, something about Sammy's voice grabbed his attention. Within just a few days, Montrose invited him to join the band.
Peter Townsend, those are my, Mick Jagger was as close to being flamboyant as I could think about being. And those were my heroes, you know, and a guy like...
Sammy was only 25 years old and had never recorded a major album. Just days earlier, he had been worrying about paying bills and scraping by with dishwashing jobs. But the moment Ronnie Montrose walked into that rehearsal space, Sammy felt something shifting again. The path ahead suddenly looked very different. Montrose wasn't just another musician. He carried the kind of reputation that could open real doors in the industry. By 1973, he was already earning impressive royalty checks, sometimes as high as $8,000, which felt like a fortune at the time. Sammy knew this opportunity was rare, and he poured everything he had into it. The band released their self-titled debut album, Montrose, in October 1973. At first, the record didn't explode onto the charts. In fact, it only climbed to number 133 on the Billboard chart in the United States. But something interesting began to happen. The music started spreading quietly, especially across Europe. Fans kept discovering the record and passing it along. Over time, songs like Bad Motor Scooter and the heavy-hitting track Rock Candy became underground favorites and eventually regular radio staples. Years later, the album's slow rise became legendary. More than a decade after its release, it finally crossed the 1 million copy mark and earned platinum status in 1986. Even Eddie Van Halen would later say that Montrose was his favorite band. explaining that the album's heavy opening chords helped inspire the sound he would develop himself. It became one of those rare records that proved great music sometimes needs time before the world fully catches up. But success didn't mean stability. In February 1975, tensions between Sammy and Ronnie Montrose finally reached their breaking point during a European tour. The relationship had been strained for months, but things escalated when Belgian reporters began calling Sammy the second coming of Robert Plant. Instead of celebrating the praise, Montrose took it personally. One night in the car, he turned to Sammy and bluntly told him he was breaking up the band. Then he asked a cold question. What would Sammy do next? Shortly afterward, the group played 2 shows at the Olympia Theater in Paris. During that stop, Sammy came down with severe food poisoning and never even flew home with Montrose. By then, the split was already sealed. Years later, Ronnie Montrose would even joke that Van Halen took far longer to fire Sammy than he did. But that painful moment forced Sammy to stand on his own. Instead of walking away from music, he built something new. After leaving Montrose, he formed his own band, and 2 familiar faces chose to follow him. Bassist Bill Church and drummer Denny Carmassi, who had also been pushed out of Montrose earlier, joined Sammy in his next chapter. The decision by bassist Bill Church and drummer Denny Carmassi to follow Sammy spoke louder than anything that had been said during the band's breakup. Their loyalty became the foundation Sammy needed to launch the next phase of his career. Together, they began building something new, recording albums, touring relentlessly, and moving forward with a sense of unity that the old Montrose lineup could no longer hold together. For Sammy, it was proof of something important. He wasn't just a singer anymore. He was becoming a leader. That transition helped shape the beginning of his solo career. While Montrose continued quietly growing in reputation long after the band split, Sammy was already pushing toward his own future. Over time, the album's influence stretched far beyond its original release, inspiring future hard rock bands like Van Halen, Poison, and Mötley Crüe. The story behind it only made the legend stronger. A kid who had grown up in poverty, who once washed dishes just to survive, had stepped onto the stage as a rock frontman. And the album that launched him took more than a decade to reach platinum status. It felt like a slow-burning victory, one that proved perseverance could outlast early setbacks. By the late 1970s and early 1980s, Sammy had transformed into something far bigger than a struggling musician. He was becoming a solo superstar. Tour after tour pulled him across the United States and Europe, where crowds kept growing larger each year. His first solo album arrived in 1975, but it took several releases before everything finally clicked. Then, in 1981, the breakthrough came. Standing Hampton exploded onto the scene and eventually went platinum, pushing Sammy firmly into the national spotlight. The momentum didn't slow down. Just 1 year later, his next record, 3 Lock Box, also reached platinum status. By that point, Sammy was headlining arenas that held more than 10,000 people, sometimes night after night. His popularity was so strong that when Van Halen approached him in 1985 to replace David Lee Roth, the situation surprised nearly everyone. Sammy was already earning enormous money on his own tours, reportedly 3 times more per tour than any single member of Van Halen at the time. Joining the band actually meant taking a financial gamble. But before that decision arrived, one song had already cemented Sammy's place in rock history. I Can't Drive 55. Released in September 1984 as the lead single from his album VOA, the song quickly caught fire with audiences. It entered the Billboard Hot 100 at number 77 on September 23, 1984, then climbed steadily for 8 weeks until reaching number 26 by November 18th. In total, it remained on the chart for 12 weeks. Meanwhile, MTV played the music video constantly. The rebellious message struck a nerve with millions of drivers frustrated by the federal 55-mile-per-hour speed limit that had been imposed across the United States. The track also climbed to number 9 on the mainstream rock chart. Over time, it became one of the defining songs of Sammy's career. When the national 55-mile-per-hour speed limit was finally repealed in 1995, Sammy even participated in a public event changing California highway signs from 55 to 65 miles per hour, an almost poetic moment for the man who had loudly challenged the rule years earlier. The legacy of the song only continued to grow. In 2000, I Can't Drive 55 secured a place on VH1's list of the 100 greatest hard rock songs, landing at number 100 after more than 600,000 fans cast their votes. That ranking placed the track alongside legendary acts like AC/DC, Led Zeppelin, and Black Sabbath. From that point forward, the song became a permanent part of Sammy's concerts. Even after he joined Van Halen, crowds continued shouting for it at nearly every show. The reason was simple. It carried an energy people connected with instantly. By 1985, one thing had become undeniable. Sammy Hagar had built a solo empire powerful enough to stand completely on its own. His tours were pulling in massive numbers, his albums were reaching platinum, and his financial success gave him rare leverage in the music industry. When Van Halen came calling, Sammy wasn't stepping into the opportunity as a desperate singer looking for a break. The timing of the announcement confused a lot of people at first. When Van Halen revealed that David Lee Roth had quit the band on April 1st, 1985, many fans assumed it had to be an April Fool's prank. But the truth settled in quickly. It wasn't a joke. Just 2 years earlier, the band had performed at the massive U.S. festival in front of roughly 375,000 people and reportedly walked away with a staggering $1 million payday. Their music was everywhere. Songs like Jump and Panama were dominating rock radio, and the band seemed unstoppable from the outside. Behind the scenes, however, things were already starting to fracture. Roth wanted more creative control and a larger voice in every decision. The push for power slowly created tension inside the band, and the pressure eventually became impossible to ignore. According to longtime manager Noel Monk, almost no one outside the band's tight inner circle saw the breakup coming. When the announcement finally landed, it hit the music world like a shockwave. Fans were still trying to process the news when the band quietly began searching for someone who could step into the spotlight and keep their momentum alive. That's when one name started circulating, Sammy Hagar. And the moment that connected them happened in the most unexpected way. One day, Eddie Van Halen happened to notice Sammy Hagar's bright red Ferrari parked outside an auto shop. Something about it caught his attention instantly. Maybe it was the boldness of it. Maybe it was just coincidence. But Eddie felt a spark of curiosity. So he did something simple. He picked up the phone and called Sammy out of the blue. Sammy later joked that he had almost predicted the moment. For years, he had told friends that someday he would end up joining Van Halen. When the call finally came, it felt strangely inevitable. Soon after, the two musicians met in person. Sammy immediately noticed something different about Eddie. Despite his reputation as one of the most electrifying guitarists in rock music, Eddie carried himself with a calm, almost humble energy. It was a sharp contrast to the flamboyant, unpredictable stage persona that David Lee Roth had made famous. Their conversation wasn't just about replacing a singer. Eddie talked about music, about the future, and about rebuilding the band into something new. But Sammy also had practical questions. He asked the kind of business questions most rock stars avoided, like how much money the band had made during their last tour. When the numbers came out, Sammy was stunned. Even with their global success, the band had split their earnings evenly and spent much of it along the way. In reality, Sammy had been earning nearly 3 times more money as a solo artist than any individual member of Van Halen. That realization gave him pause. Joining the band could actually mean taking a financial step backward. Yet something about the chemistry in that room kept pulling him in. Sammy saw passion, potential, and a band that was hungry to prove something again. At the same time, it reminded him that even the biggest rock stars could be surprisingly reckless when it came to money. And perhaps more importantly, Sammy realized the band didn't just need another singer. They needed someone steady. When they finally started jamming together, the chemistry became obvious almost immediately. During one session, Sammy began improvising lyrics, scatting random words over Eddie's guitar parts. Out of that spontaneous moment came a line that would soon define a new era. Only time will tell if we stand the test of time. Those early fragments eventually evolved into the song, Why Can't This Be Love? The band already had several musical ideas sketched out, but Sammy's voice changed the direction completely. His powerful vocals pushed the music toward something brighter, more melodic, and more expansive. Producer Mick Jones stepped in to help shape the material into a finished record. When Mo Austin from Warner Brothers Records heard the track, his reaction was immediate. "I smell money," he reportedly said. The song quickly became a massive hit and marked the beginning of a completely new chapter for Van Halen. Fans who had doubted the band's future without David Lee Roth suddenly realized something important. Van Halen wasn't fading, they were evolving. Recording sessions for the album pushed Sammy even further. During one vocal take, Mick Jones encouraged him to reach higher notes than he had ever attempted before. Sammy pushed himself so hard that he began hyperventilating in the studio and nearly passed out from the strain. But in that moment of pressure, something incredible happened. He delivered a perfect take, the soaring chorus, "We'll get higher and higher," lifted the entire song and turned it into one of the band's most unforgettable moments, proving that this new lineup wasn't just a replacement. Moments like that in the studio came with a cost. They demanded pain, pressure, and sometimes even fear. But in music, as in life, the greatest breakthroughs often appear when someone pushes beyond what feels possible. That's exactly what happened after Sammy Hagar officially joined Van Halen in 1985. From that moment forward, the band entered one of the most successful stretches in its history. Album after album stacked up major achievements. They released 5150 in 1986, followed by OU 812 in 1988, for Unlawful Carnal Knowledge in 1991, and finally Balance in 1995. Each one reached #1 on the Billboard 200. Together, those records sold more than 16 million copies worldwide. The success of 5150 alone was enormous, eventually selling over 8.8 million copies. With every release, the band's tours grew larger, filling arenas and stadiums across the United States and around the world. By 1996, Van Halen had achieved something no other band had done before. They became the only group in rock history to have 2 different lead singers each deliver 4 consecutive #1 albums. It was a remarkable accomplishment that silenced many early critics who believed the band couldn't survive the departure of David Lee Roth. The accolades followed the success. In 1991, the album for Unlawful Carnal Knowledge earned the band a Grammy Award for Best Hard Rock Performance, proving that the Van Hagar era wasn't just commercially successful, it was critically respected as well. The numbers alone told the story. Their first single with Sammy, Why Can't This Be Love, was released on March 24, 1986. It entered the Billboard Hot 100 at number 52 before steadily climbing the chart until it reached #3 on May 17th. The song remained there for a week and ultimately spent 16 weeks on the chart. At the same time, it topped the Cashbox Top 100 and became an international hit in countries like the United Kingdom, Australia, and Sweden. In the United States, the single eventually earned gold certification after selling more than 500,000 copies. For critics who had predicted disaster without Roth, the success was impossible to ignore. Instead of collapsing, Van Halen had opened a new door. The era that followed lasted from 1985 to 1996, 11 years of relentless touring, constant recording, and steady reinvention. Every studio album during that stretch reached #1. 5,150 sold roughly 8.8 million copies. OU 812 moved around 4 million. For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge climbed close to 5 million, and Balance reached about 3 million. Even though the partnership eventually ended in 1996, amid growing tension between Sammy and the Van Halen brothers, Eddie Van Halen and Alex Van Halen, the period remains one of the most powerful chapters in the band's history. Few bands have ever matched that kind of sustained success. What made those years even more special was the way Eddie's creativity seemed to flourish alongside Sammy's voice. For the first time, Eddie had a singer capable of matching the melodic ideas he constantly heard in his head. That freedom opened the door for more ambitious songwriting. Tracks like Dreams and Love Walks In revealed a richer, more layered sound than the band had explored before. Producer Mick Jones played a crucial role in shaping that evolution, encouraging the band to experiment and push into new territory. Critics later described the period as one of the most creative stretches of Eddie Van Halen's career. Interestingly, the shift came after the band stopped working with their longtime producer Ted Templeman, whose earlier work had defined much of Van Halen's classic sound. What initially seemed like a setback turned into a creative turning point. Mick Jones approached the band differently. He took long, chaotic jam sessions and carefully shaped them into structured songs ready for radio. He helped tighten the arrangement of Why Can't This Be Love and transformed Eddie's synthesizer ideas into the soaring opening of Dreams. Producer Mick Jones played a major role in helping 5150 become a massive success. His guidance helped stabilize the band during a moment of transition, giving Van Halen the confidence to move forward after losing longtime producer Ted Templeman. With Jones helping shape the sound, the band entered a new era filled with hit records and sold-out tours. But not every chapter of the story was bright. One of the darkest periods arrived during the band's 2004 reunion tour. By then, Eddie Van Halen was battling serious personal struggles. According to Sammy Hagar, Eddie had fallen deeply into alcohol and drug abuse, and the effects were becoming impossible to hide. His guitar playing, once legendary for its precision and creativity, had begun to suffer. Some fans in the audience struggled to recognize songs they had loved for decades. Sammy later described Eddie during that time as frighteningly thin, hunched over, and visibly worn down. He had lost teeth, part of his tongue, and often drank wine directly from the bottle. One disturbing incident even involved Eddie smashing windows on a private jet using a wine bottle during a heated moment. For Sammy, the situation became terrifying. At one point, he seriously considered leaving the tour after only 40 shows. But the contract included enormous financial penalties for walking away early, and he felt trapped. What should have been a triumphant reunion instead turned into one of the most painful experiences of his career. Behind those struggles was a deeper health battle. In 2000, doctors discovered a growth on Eddie's tongue that turned out to be cancer. Surgeons were forced to remove roughly a third of his tongue during treatment. Eddie later suggested that years of holding metal guitar picks in his mouth, combined with smoking and substance abuse, may have contributed to the illness. By 2002, he was declared cancer-free, but the relief didn't last forever. The disease eventually returned, this time affecting his throat. Multiple surgeries and the physical toll of years of hard living left Eddie noticeably weakened. Those health challenges became part of what made the 2004 tour so difficult for everyone involved. Each night before stepping on stage, Sammy developed a quiet ritual. He would sit alone in his dressing room and listen carefully for Eddie's guitar. He wasn't listening for a simple warm-up. He was listening for reassurance, hoping to hear that Eddie could still play. That small, painful moment revealed just how much fear had taken hold. Sammy worried Eddie might collapse in the middle of a show. He worried he might die in front of thousands of fans. Years later, Sammy admitted the tour remained one of the worst experiences of his life. Yet despite everything, his respect for Eddie never disappeared. He still remembered the kindness Eddie had shown him, the genius of his playing, and the spark that had once driven the band forward. The tour left emotional scars on everyone involved, but it also revealed something deeply human about rock legends. Even the greatest musicians can be fragile when life pushes too hard. And strangely enough, the cracks in the band had started forming years earlier over something incredibly small. When things finally collapsed in June 1996, the breaking point was a single lyric in a new song connected to the film Twister. On the surface, the argument seemed trivial, but by that time, months of tension had already pushed everyone dangerously close to the edge. Eddie believed one line needed to be changed because the film's director didn't want the song tied too closely to the movie. Sammy disagreed. He believed the song worked exactly as it was, and that altering the lyric would weaken it. The disagreement escalated quickly. What began as a creative debate soon exposed just how thin everyone's patience had become. Within days, the situation reached its breaking point. Eddie called Sammy and delivered the news bluntly. He told him he was fired. According to Sammy, Eddie added that since Sammy often acted like a solo artist within the band, he might as well go be one again. The speed of the decision left Sammy stunned. One moment they were arguing about a lyric, and the next he was suddenly out of the band he had fronted for nearly a decade. But the story didn't stop there. Shortly after that call, Eddie drove directly to the home of David Lee Roth. The news spread across the rock world like a wildfire. For Sammy, the move felt deeply personal. Roth had been the band's original frontman. The Voice fans had compared Sammy to for years. Yet only days after the split, something happened that shocked the rock world. Within a week, Eddie Van Halen and David Lee Roth were already back in the studio together. The two began writing and recording new songs for the band's upcoming greatest hits release, Best of Volume 1. Fans were stunned. Rumors spread quickly, and the press exploded with speculation about what had really happened behind the scenes. For Sammy Hagar, the news felt like a deep betrayal. He had received no warning that this reunion was even being considered. Everything had been arranged quietly behind closed doors. Sammy only learned about it after the meetings had already happened and the damage was done. Then, just 5 days after Eddie first met with Roth, the phone rang again. It was June 16th, 1996. Sammy picked up the call with no idea that his entire world was about to shift again. On the other end of the line, Eddie spoke bluntly. He accused Sammy of never listening and never doing what the band asked. Then he repeated the same line that had already cut so deeply before, that Sammy acted like a solo artist inside the band. Sammy was stunned. He hadn't expected the call, and hearing the words delivered so coldly left him almost speechless. A partnership that had lasted nearly 10 years ended in a matter of minutes. 10 years of albums, tours, and chart-topping success gone in a single conversation. 10 days later, on June 26, 1996, Van Halen made the split official. The band publicly announced that Sammy Hagar was out and David Lee Roth was back. The sudden firing became one of the most abrupt and controversial breakups in rock history. From Sammy's perspective, the entire situation had unfolded behind curtains, with almost no warning to the man who had helped deliver 4 consecutive #1 albums. But the deeper truth behind the breakup reached back several years. In October 1993, the band suffered a major loss when their longtime manager Ed Loeffler passed away after battling cancer. For years, Loeffler had been the quiet force holding the group together. He understood their personalities, smoothed over conflicts, and kept tensions from spiraling out of control. Without him, the balance inside the band began to shift. His replacement, Ray Daniels, who happened to be closely connected to Alex Van Halen, never built the same relationship with Sammy. The chemistry that once kept the band stable slowly began to unravel. Arguments grew sharper, trust faded, and Sammy started to feel like he no longer belonged in the room. Losing Ed Loeffler hadn't just meant losing a manager, it meant losing the peacekeeper. Around that time, the band began discussing the idea of releasing a greatest hits album. Sammy hated the concept. To him, it felt like a sign that the band had run out of creative ideas. But as pressure from the label grew stronger, he reluctantly agreed to participate. Then things became even more frustrating. One of Sammy's songs that had been planned for the Twister soundtrack was quietly replaced by an instrumental track called Respect the Wind, performed by Eddie and Alex. Another track, Humans Being, did make it onto the soundtrack, but even that song became tangled in the lyric dispute that ultimately triggered the breakup. To Sammy, it felt like every decision was pushing him further to the side. He wanted time to rest. He wanted time with his family. Instead, he felt pressured into recording songs that barely counted toward a real album. Watching one of his songs get replaced only deepened the feeling that his voice in the band no longer mattered. By that point, the split had almost become inevitable. But Sammy's story didn't end with Van Halen. In fact, his life was about to shift in an entirely different direction, one that few people in the music world expected. In 1996, the same year he left the band, Sammy opened a beachside nightclub in Mexico called the Cabo Wabo Cantina. What started as a fun passion project soon sparked a bigger idea. Sammy partnered with a family-run distillery in Jalisco, Mexico, and launched a new brand called Cabo Wabo Tequila. At first, many people dismissed it as another celebrity side business, but the numbers quickly proved otherwise. In its very first year, the tequila sold an astonishing 37,000 cases, far more than industry experts had predicted. The spirits world was shocked. Few believed a rock star could create a product that serious tequila drinkers would actually respect. Yet the momentum kept growing. By 2006, annual sales had surged to roughly 147,000 cases. Cabo Wabo had become the second best-selling premium tequila brand in the United States. What made it successful wasn't just Sammy's name, it was the quality. Many customers genuinely believed it tasted better than the mass-produced brands lining supermarket shelves. Awards began pouring in from international spirits competitions, and the business kept expanding. By that same year, Cabo Wabo was generating roughly $60 million in annual revenue. What had started as a small side project tied to a nightclub in Mexico had transformed into a serious global brand, with national distribution, major recognition, and a growing reputation across the spirits industry. As the years passed, Sammy Hagar didn't just attach his name to a product. He built an entire identity around it. His face, his story, and his passion were printed directly on the bottles of Cabo Wabo tequila. Fans weren't simply buying a celebrity drink. They were buying into the same bold energy that had carried Sammy through decades of rock and roll, and the world responded. Soon, Cabo Wabo became a recognizable name far beyond music fans. The tequila stood on its own reputation, praised for its quality and authenticity. What started as a fun extension of the Cabo Wabo Cantina quickly grew into a booming international business. Then came a moment that stunned almost everyone around him. On May 7th, 2007, Sammy sold 80% of Cabo Wabo tequila to Grupo Campari for a staggering $80 million. The deal shocked industry insiders and even some of Sammy's closest friends. The tequila brand he had built from scratch was suddenly worth more than his entire music career combined. A few years later, Sammy sold the remaining 20% stake for another $11 to $15 million. In total, he walked away with nearly $95 million. The deal proved something important about Sammy Hagar. He wasn't just a rock star. He was an entrepreneur, a creator capable of turning passion projects into real empires. But the Van Halen story still wasn't finished. In October 2024, Alex Van Halen released a memoir titled Brothers. Almost immediately, readers noticed something unusual. The book's story stopped in 1985, right before Sammy joined the band. The entire Van Hagar era was missing. Those years had produced 4 #1 albums and some of the band's biggest hits, yet they were almost completely erased from the narrative. The omission angered many fans, but it hit Sammy especially hard. He publicly called the decision blasphemy, arguing that it ignored the work he and Eddie Van Halen had created together. The tension between Sammy and Alex had already been simmering for decades. By that point, the two hadn't spoken in more than 20 years. Their last real communication dated back to around 2005. Sammy said he had tried multiple times to understand the silence, but the wall between them never seemed to come down. He believed jealousy might have played a role, especially because Sammy and bassist Michael Anthony continued performing Van Halen songs on tour, keeping that era alive for fans. Meanwhile, Alex had no path to touring on his own. Business disagreements also added fuel to the fire, particularly surrounding the success of Cabo Wabo. Alex had always kept his distance from the tequila venture, and the financial success of the brand only widened the divide. Over the years, the tension became something that hovered over every interview, every documentary, and every conversation about the band's history. In 2025, Sammy finally addressed Alex directly in a message. He said he didn't want arguments, didn't want drama, and simply wanted peace. At the same time, he reminded Alex that he was still out there performing Van Halen songs, keeping the music alive and continuing to bring attention and money back to the band's legacy. To Sammy, the issue wasn't just about old arguments. It was about recognition. He believed the era he helped build deserved its place in rock history. The feud had become less about past conflicts and more about identity, about who gets to define the story of one of the biggest rock bands the world has ever seen. Yet behind all the tension, another story had quietly taken place. Months before Eddie Van Halen passed away in October 2020, comedian George Lopez helped reconnect Eddie and Sammy after years of silence. The reunion was emotional. Old memories resurfaced, and for a brief moment, the past felt closer again. During that conversation, Eddie shared something deeply personal. He told Sammy about a dream he still carried, a final tour that would reunite the different eras of Van Halen one last time. He believed they could make noise together again once he beat his illness. But there was one condition. Eddie asked Sammy to keep the plan secret, even from Alex. He wanted to reveal it himself when the time was right. Sammy honored that promise. Behind the scenes, the idea had already been quietly developing. Eddie and his son, Wolfgang Van Halen, had been discussing a massive reunion concept known as the Kitchen Sink Tour. The vision was ambitious. Bring together every major era of Van Halen, Roth, Hagar, and the musicians who helped shape the band's legacy. Promoter Irving Azoff had been involved in early discussions, and Michael Anthony had even been approached. If it had happened, it might have become one of the biggest reunion tours in rock history. But time was running out. Doctors reportedly told Eddie in late 2017 that he might only have 6 weeks left to live. Experimental treatments in Germany gave him more time, nearly 3 additional years, but the illness continued to take its toll. The dream tour never happened. Later, Wolfgang revealed that the unrealized reunion remained one of his father's deepest regrets. Even so, Sammy Hagar continued building his life far beyond the band drama. By 2025, his estimated net worth had reached around $150 million. Much of that wealth came from business ventures like Cabo Wabo Tequila, which alone brought him close to $100 million. Music royalties added another $40 million, while real estate investments contributed roughly $30 million more. But behind the fame and financial success, family remained at the center of everything. Sammy married Betsy Berardi in 1968, and together they had two sons, Aaron and Andrew. After their divorce in 1994, Sammy married Carrie Carta in 1995. The couple later welcomed two daughters, Kama in 1996 and Samantha in 2001. Through all the chaos of rock stardom, his family stayed grounded beside him. In 2008, they launched the Hagar Family Foundation, focusing on helping children and fighting hunger. Sammy often said that everything he achieved, whether in music, business, or life, came from the people who believed in him long before the spotlight ever arrived. And that's the story behind the promises, the music, the rivalry, and the legacy of Sammy Hagar. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like the video, leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into rock legends and untold stories from music history. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.